The President is Commander-in-Chief. His highest constitutional duty is protecting American lives. As of 2016, so-called refugee admissions from the Middle East, Near East, South Asia, and Africa accounted for 80% of so-called refugee admissions into America. I say so-called refugees because the United Nations states no country is obligated by international law to take refugees from a country in which they are already protected. The result of America's flawed policy, America is the world's top refugee resettlement country on the planet. In a 2015 Breitbart interview, I opposed these dangerous refugee policies and stated, quote, Barack Obama wants to endanger Americans by importing people, some of whom undoubtedly will resort to terrorism and killing Americans at some point in the future, end quote. Consistent with my view that importing unvetted people from terrorist-laden countries threatens American lives, the House in 2015 passed a law requiring a full FBI background investigation for alleged Iraq or Syria refugees. The bill died in the Senate while under an Obama veto threat. In 2017, a newly elected President Trump stated, quote, in order to protect Americans, the United States must ensure that those admitted to this country do not bear hostile attitudes toward it and its founding principles. The United States cannot and should not admit those who do not support the Constitution or those who would place violent ideologies over American law. In addition, the United States should not admit those who engage in acts of bigotry or hatred, including honor killings, other forms of violence against women, or the persecution of those who practice religions different from their own, end quote. As expected, socialist Democrats and their fake news media allies reacted by calling President Trump names rather than support policies that save American lives. For example, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said, quote, this week, I joined my colleagues on the steps of the Supreme Court to fight the president's reprehensible order. The values illustrated were in stark contrast with the president's unconstitutional, immoral, and dangerous ban on refugees and citizens of Muslim countries coming into the United States, end quote. Predictably, a radical leftist judge restrained President Trump from protecting American lives. Fortunately, a later President Trump refugee and travel policy was approved by the Supreme Court as, quote, squarely within the scope of presidential authority, end quote. As would be expected, this decision was ridiculed with hysterical headlines from the left. NBC News stated, quote, the Supreme Court's travel ban decision adds to its legacy of legitimizing racism, end quote. Protecting Americans from terrorism is reprehensible, immoral, racism. This is all ignorant and baseless socialist Democrat and fake news media slander intended to stifle rational debate. But truth eventually wins out. Recently, an unvetted so-called Syrian refugee who entered America 3 years ago was charged with terrorism. According to an affidavit filed in Pittsburgh federal court, quote, the FBI investigation of Mustafa Musab Alawimer revealed that Alawimer plotted to bomb a church located on the north side of Pittsburgh using a weapon of mass destruction, i.e. an explosive device. According to Alawimer, his motivation to detonate a device at the church was to support the cause of ISIS and to inspire other ISIS supporters in the United States to join together and commit similar acts in the name of ISIS, end quote. Fortunately, the FBI stopped Alawimer from blowing up a church and slaughtering innocent American Christians. Unfortunately, American lives are still at risk from terrorists masquerading as refugees. Mr. Speaker, I ask, how many dead Americans does it take to cause open borders advocates to secure our borders and protect American lives? Unfortunately, no one knows because socialist Democrats have shown there is no amount of American blood on their hands that will cause them to protect American lives by securing America's borders. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.